Hi, my name is Christina Maka and I just come from watching the film FEMME in the Berlinale. The premiere actually. I saw it with the cast and crew and the directors and everybody. Some of them were in the cinema. And it was an amazing movie and I really recommend it. And it is not a niche movie, it is not specifically for LGBT people. Actually, this movie, I think, like, it opens a conversation. So I could talk about movies for hours and hours, but I never wanted to be a film critic, you know? I wanted to make movies myself. Lately, I'm kind of thinking that I can do both, maybe, hopefully. Who knows? Can you? I don't know. But yeah, my priority obviously is making films myself. Being an actress actually is my main priority nowadays. But okay, let's get into it. So this movie is about drag queen. So the movie starts with him in drag queen outfit in the drag persona, and then he has no cigarettes anymore and goes to buy cigarettes, and then he gets attacked by a man that was checking him out earlier and his group of friends. And then he finds the same man again, which is openly very homophobic and kind of a gangster, and he has this tough man persona on the surface, and he finds him again in a gay sauna, and he starts following him, and he starts building a relationship with this guy, like getting intimate with him, and by the way, spoilers. So yeah, he starts getting intimate with him, and his whole plan is to basically take revenge. It's a revenge movie. So he's planning on how to basically take revenge. And what I really like about this movie, that it's a revenge movie, but at the same time, violence is never an option for the protagonist, Jules. He wants to take revenge by outing this guy, and he starts looking online at porn where there's this kind of kink called like outing your boyfriend with hidden cameras, what I was thinking, but Jules didn't think of that for some reason. He took a lot of risks, actually, Jules, in the process. And what I got very curious about is the question if... well, I saw some parallels there to victims of rape, that either two things can happen and happen often with victims of rape. And one is that they become very sexual, and this is not as much talked about or heard of as the other one, which is you become kind of asexual. You take distance from sex and everything, you know? And sometimes I was feeling like the protagonist, Jules, was actively kind of seeking the thrill, seeking the danger. At one point I was even wondering if he was actively breaking the fourth wall in a very subtle way, because there was a dangerous situation involving his boyfriend Preston, which is the guy that beat him up and that he wants to take revenge on, and his whole gang of boys. You know, so there's two confrontations between the boys, the gang of Preston, and Jules, and at one point Jules really starts getting along with these guys because they connect through the video game. I think it's Tekken, I'm not sure, but it's a Street Fighter kind of 2D game where you fight, yeah. And Jules is really good at this. And so he beats this alpha gang leader's ass multiple times while playing a female character, which is a very satisfying scene, to be honest, and the funniest scene of the movie. And it comes as such a relief at this point because the movie is so tense. It's really so tense all the time. And at this point where Jules is confronted with the gang of Preston, his boyfriend, his homophobic boyfriend. At this point, it's really a relief because you always see this, well, whatever. It's a really funny scene. But after this, the boys, the gang invites Jules and Preston to the club. And Preston is like, no, we have to go. We have stuff to do. And and the alpha gang leader is like, you boys do whatever the fuck you want. And Jules is like, I will do that. No, but then Jules actually decides to say, no, I'm gonna join to the club. And Preston is like, why? Are you fucking crazy? And Jules is like, to keep it interesting. And this was the moment where I was thinking, is this maybe meta? Is he just doing it for the audience? I don't know. Anyways, I don't think that's the case. I even got to ask the directors this question actually, and they said no, I think. No, they said no. It's not meant to be meta or something. It's just like, yeah, I think it's just very, very three-dimensional characters. And what the directors said when they went on stage is that they come from a background where they like neo-noirs and revenge movies, but always felt like it's a boys' club and they're not invited, right? As I assume queer people, I guess. So basically they wanted to create a movie where queer people can also take revenge, you know, can also be violent. Well, this was the original idea, and then they created the short film, and then they created this feature film, which is a different story, and it's a lot about the relationship of Preston and Jules. But what I like most about it is that it opens the conversation, you know? It opens the conversation between two very different people. That is kind of like a Romeo and Juliet story, right? The classic. And you get to understand both mindsets, which is so helpful. So this opens the conversation. Now in the audience, there were some people who were offended, and they were like asking stuff like, why do we even have to bring out a movie like this, you know? We have seen so much violence already. And I think, first of all, the violence scene wasn't as bad as I thought. The camera was very shaky, and it was short, and you didn't see any real. It's not. It's handled in a very, very particular way, and I think it's a very smart way. And you basically just. It's like a blackout, and suddenly you wake up and you're on the streets, and you have no. The protagonist has no clothes, and then the protagonist has to get home, and so I think. It's basically done respectfully. Then from another audience member, I heard that, oh, all the movies with queer people have to have gay bashing in them. And yeah, that's kind of a problem. But I mean, the whole premise of this movie is to take this as a starting point. And then on the other hand, I feel like it's very important to be real. And this is real. So why wouldn't you talk about this? And then I also, to another degree, don't understand why queer people come into a queer movie, and instead of appreciating the representation, and more on that later, they basically, as I see it, take the wind out of their own community sails. You know, by another person was really offended that they didn't put a trigger warning in front, and the directors were like, "Yeah, thank you, we will put a trigger warning," which is cool. Yes, I get it, but I mean, the whole tone is like being offended. You know, taking it personal. Now, on the other hand, I have to say. I was very triggered by this movie myself, but I don't say it's a bad movie, you know, or that it shouldn't exist. This is like limiting people's freedom of speech. So, you know, actually, I feel like us millennials, we kind of suck. Us millennials, we have a problem, and I don't want to generalize too much, but I see, and obviously other people in other generations also suffer from the same, and I see that too, but I feel like it's a real thing with millennials, as I have been able to tell, or in my experience, that they kind of take ideologies without making their own thoughts, right? Building their own belief systems. And that's never good, you know, that's never ever good, because it doesn't allow for an open conversation. It doesn't allow for an open conversation, and And it makes you inauthentic, to be honest. I mean, it doesn't even matter what ideology you're adapting. Obviously, there's some that are better than other, and I would prefer, if you have to do it, that you would adapt the LGBT and queer ideology. But I don't even think that this is good, because if you're that, if you just adapt an ideology and you don't make your own thoughts about it, then you also don't listen, you know, and you just close off. You're closed off, and there's no conversation possible. Now, in this movie, there was a real conversation between this really homophobic guy and Jules, and you can really see where both characters are coming from, right? And even for me, that, I mean, just to be blunt, I mean, like, people have tried to kill me several times, you know, for being trans, you know, and I was very triggered by this movie. I was very tense all movie long. But I mean, I will never go like, hey, this made me feel bad, so it's a bad movie. No, I mean, it's important. I feel represented. It's so nice for me to see that somebody brings this on the big screen. You know, after Jules was attacked, his character changes and he becomes very, very reserved and careful and doesn't go out anymore and doesn't have fun anymore. And his friends are like, I want my old friend back. And that's PTSD. And to see it on the screen, I mean, like, yeah, it has been done before, but I mean, this is a very specifically queer movie. And, well, I just feel, even if it's been done before, you know, it's always good to talk about stuff. So one time, my own feature movie. I have a feature movie. You can check it out. It's on YouTube for free because I don't give a fuck. I just want people to see it. It's obvious. It's my first work as a filmmaker, so it's not perfect. Sometimes it's a little shaky camera. Sometimes it's like the sound is not the best. But I'm still hella proud of it, you know. And so it's 3 chapters, and it deals with transphobia. And it's 3 unchronologic chapters, 2 protagonists, and slice of life. And in the first chapter, it's about very subtle transphobia, the kind of transphobia that you might easily miss if you're not very familiar with this topic. And the kind of transphobia where maybe a lot of the audience members after watching it would be like, hey, but this wasn't transphobic, it's normal, you know? I guess you know what I'm talking about, but also different kinds of subtle transphobia. And I think it's so important to address subtle transphobia, subtle racism. You know, it's a very real thing and it's very difficult to talk about. For example, Get Out did a great job, right? And then the second chapter is a little bit more intense cases of transphobia. And then the third chapter is like intense cases of transphobia where really no one can say that's not transphobic anymore. And the 2 protagonists, one of them at least, has a coping mechanism which is very strong, and it's drugs. So she has a drug addiction. It's her coping mechanism, and she gets homeless and stuff, you know. And then when I presented this movie one time, an audience member said to me, you know, I'm trans too, and I struggle with drug addiction, so this was very triggering for me to see. And I would have appreciated you to not do that, you know, because we don't need that in movies. We don't need that anymore. We have enough of it in real life and stuff, you know. And I just answered, you know, well, it's a very thin line between being tasteless and trying to communicate and bring awareness to a specific topic that is real. And my job as a filmmaker, and I'm proud of coming up with that answer on the spot, but my job as a filmmaker is to try to not cross the line, but get as close to it as possible, you know? Or not necessarily even get as close to it as possible, but just not to cross it, you know? And I can just say that I tried, and if I failed, I'm sorry, in your opinion. But then again, you know, I feel like to some degree, I mean, I appreciate the comment because it also made me learn back then to put a trigger warning in front of all of my movies, because all of my movies are really triggering. And I wouldn't want to have it any other way. So now we come to an interesting point, you know. I think, okay, what could really make a change in society, you know? Like I've heard this Avenger actors talk about how they are in really, really isolated parts of the world, and little kids will look at them and go like, that's Iron Man or that's Hulk, you know? And everybody knows them, right? And these are heroes. Now, let's not talk necessarily about them, but even them, you know, all these Marvel heroes, you should be capable of watching mainstream and independent movies, by the way. I think if not, then you're also kind of close-minded. There's really good stuff in all sections, you know, in independent and in mainstream. Anyways, so let's talk about Batman, for example. He's fucking crazy. He's so fucking flawed. He's psycho. And he enjoys violence, you know? And I look up to him ever since I was 3 years old. He's so badass, he's so cool, he's so intelligent and so strong. And he can beat Superman, even though he has no superpowers, just with his intellect, making a master plan, and having skill, you know? And, well, I have this thing hanging here, and I would think it's nice if you... The best characters, in my opinion, are deeply flawed characters, right? Anti-heroes. They don't have to be, but I feel like there's a lack of anti-heroes that are queer. And my problem is that once someone attempts, and very, very gently and subtly, and with an easy, light touch attempts to have a go at it and have a queer anti-hero, in a subtle way even, like, we ourselves, the queer community, stand against it. Why are we doing that? You know? So in this movie, the protagonist Jules never actually wanted to use violence to get his revenge. But on the other hand, I wouldn't mind a fucking like a Django Unchained kind of movie on the queer side, you know? And Django, like, you cannot make one-sided movies. They're not, like, Django got whipped, and at one point he had like his balls in the face of his perpetrator and he was ready to cut them off and stuff, you know? He goes through so much suffering, but this is what makes it even better in the end, that he beats all of their asses, you know? That's really good. And, well, I wonder why there's always such a high resistance to when queer people or women are the ones, are the perpetrators of violence, you know? I mean, how many movies do we have where the same thing happens again and again and again, and men are the perpetrators, you know? Do women always have to be like victims, I guess? And if they turn the thing around and women are the evil ones, you know, why are we restricted like this in filmmaking? Or why does the audience restrict filmmakers like that? You know, one time I directed a short film that was very improvised, and it was called Dicksmashers. It was about a couple of radical feminists who are evil and like to bash man dick, and there was huge controversy about this movie, you know, and one of the actresses got so upset by men, and I'm sure maybe some women also might take issue with this, but in this case it was only men being offended, and then one of the actresses decided to direct a second part herself, and she wrote and directed herself, and she went into this whole thing. So yeah, anyways, I really, really like this movie, and I can't wait to actually get it, to watch it again. And I think everybody should watch it, because it really, really opens up a conversation, and I think it's an important conversation to be had. Like, I also heard the comment like that it's bad that you start feeling bad for Preston's character, the oppressor. Um, and I don't feel like that at all, to be honest, because it's important that we as humans stop distancing or building up distance between us and going further and further away from each other, but start cutting ourselves some slack and just start coming towards one another. And for that, sometimes you need to have difficult conversations, you know, and bring up difficult topics. And maybe it's triggering sometimes, you know, but it's important. You cannot always, I mean, it's never good in life. If it's really hard for you, then yeah, take maybe some distance, you know, but you cannot run away from problems. I guess everybody knows that. And so we have to face them, we have to talk about them, we have to look at them, you know. And so I think it's a very important thing. And this movie still is really not violent at all, and it doesn't indulge in violence at all, you know. Then again, there's a very different thing if like the tone of the movie, is it a horror movie, is it a drama, you know, is it like in Tarantino's movies, for example, like I see violence as art, it's beautiful, you know, it's a completely different thing. And yeah, you always have to see everything not as black and white, but like see grayish, different shades of gray, and maybe even color, you know. And I hope that the audiences will not try to limit filmmakers in also sometimes making extreme works, you know, because they're important. And some of the best works that we have started out as scandal movies, you know, very meaningful things. So yeah, that's my take on FEMME. I really fucking loved it and can't wait to watch it again. And I really recommend it. I hope I didn't offend too many of you. And check out my movies if you want to. Put a lot of work into there, and all my earlier stuff is I just put everything for free on YouTube because, like I said, I wouldn't be able to sell any of that anyways, you know. I made so little money with this, so I just decided to, you know. So at least maybe like check it out. Maybe you like it. Maybe it gives you something. I have very, very diverse stuff. I have film. I have musical documentaries. I have narrative, short films and feature films, action comedy, drama. Yeah. All right. So have a nice evening, and have a nice day, evening or morning, wherever you are, and peace out.